it's eye-opening for the client because they can see what they're actually doing. But I'm looking beyond just the numbers of the macros, so to speak. I'm looking for their responses 1 to 2 to 3 hours after their meals. I'm looking for different patterns and things that are happening throughout their day. So that's just the numbers and the macros are kind of like looking at it at face value. But beyond that, I'm looking to see, again, how their body is responding to food, because that's telling us more about their metabolism sometimes than the actual food itself.
Welcome to the Calorie Conundrum Podcast with Coach Strick. Join us as we expand the weight loss conversation to beyond just calories and dare to ask the question, why does eating less and exercising more sometimes not produce the desired results? Here's Coach Strick to discuss this Calorie Conundrum.
Well, hello everyone, this is Coach Strick, and on today's episode, I asked the health expert Dani Conway how a woman in her 40s should go about losing weight. Her answer is simple, but it's exactly what you need to hear before you embark on your weight loss journey. And Dani should know, as she was 65 pounds overweight on a low-calorie, fat-free diet doing hours of cardio a day. Dani has been in practice for over 13 years and has been a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner for over 10, a Kalish method practitioner for 12, and specializes in weight loss, fat loss, and hormone and gut health by using a customized approach, looking at everything from macros to functional lab testing. Dani works with clients online from around the world, and you can find more about her on her website, nutritionthenaturalway.com. Let's hear what Dani has to say about the foundations to health and weight loss. Dani, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, so once again, we have a person on the podcast today that has an experience in losing weight, and your story started when you were in your 20s. Can you please, tell us your backstory about your weight loss story and kind of what you did to overcome that?
Yeah, absolutely. So first I want to say I'm 44 now. I was in my 20s, obviously almost 20 something years ago, and at my worst health actually at that time. So I was 65 pounds overweight on a fat-free diet, doing everything that my personal trainer friends told me to do that should have, in theory, yielded a lot of weight loss, from, low calories to not eating much, if any, fat, tons and tons of cardio. And that didn't work. I still had tons of food cravings, tons of digestive issues, and hormone problems. The doctors told me I was normal, yet I couldn't lose the weight. I felt like crap. And I was only in my 20s, and I just wasn't, I was wondering like how I was going to live for, till I'm 40 and 50 and 60, feeling as poorly as I did in my 20s.
Yeah. So what did you end up doing to overcome those issues, to lose the weight?
So that whole kind of scenario went on for quite a while, and it really sent me down a path looking for something different. So when I say something different, like a different approach to nutrition, a different approach to food, different approach to even to exercise and workouts. But that kind of brought me to learning more about eating good fats, quality proteins, the quality of food, so quality over quantity, ingredients, things like that. Looking at macronutrients, the ratios of proteins, carbs, and fats differently. And this was pretty much going against like the fitness industry, the nutrition industry. So it was a lot of like self-discovery on, what trial and error and what worked and that kind of thing.
So is that what you mean by nutrition the natural way? I know your website's called Nutrition the Natural Way. Is that kind of what you're talking about with that name?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and that's part of it. Another big part of the Nutrition the Natural Way is really viewing nutrition as the foundation for everything. So if food isn't right, then nothing else can be right. If food isn't right, hormones can't be balanced, gut health can't be balanced. So often we're turning to, as like a society, people are turning to supplements and the best quick fix and the next best thing and all of that, yet they're still not eating the right food for their body and metabolism. So nutrition the natural way is, yes, definitely clean, more of a clean food approach, but also getting that foundation right. I like to compare it to, like, you would never build a house on a muddy foundation. You need to have a really solid cement foundation. So if our bodies are going to kind of carry us, so to speak, for our entire lives, we have to build that foundation of health, and we can do that through food and through the right nutrition.
Yeah, great. So I know you specialize in, helping people with weight loss, and now that you're in your 40s, you kind of want to specialize in that area. And good on you, because I know we were talking about before. I'm really interested in, helping people lose weight. That's why I started this podcast. That's what I'm really passionate about. But
Mm-hmm.
the 40 and over category, especially women, is a very difficult, you know, field to be in my opinion, just because there's so many things going on hormonally. Can you talk to us about that, and maybe how you overcome some of these struggles that women are having when they age?
Yeah, I just love this. So part of my passion is, being in my 40s and being the healthiest, the leanest, the strongest I've ever been in my life. And I know that a lot of women, approach 40 feeling like they want to kind of have that same experience. And I think what happens, as women and, in society, we learn that after 40, our hormones change, and we're supposed to, go through all these symptoms of, menopause and hormone changes, and just basically supposed to deal with it. The night sweats, the hot flashes, all of the mood changes, the sleep patterns, or I should say lack of sleep. And that's just part of the quote unquote aging process. And I think that just is crap, honestly. Hope that's okay for me to say. But really kind of, taking a different approach and looking at, okay, how can I support, how can I help, these female clients support their own body, their metabolism. So I do specialize in, a ketogenic and low carb approach, but I also believe that one size doesn't fit all, and that's definitely not for everyone. So I've taken, I've helped a lot of women approach that the right way so that it is a long-term solution for them. I've also taken a lot of women off of keto and low carb, and we really kind of approach macros from, a different angle, and looking at what is going to support their individual metabolism and their digestion and gut health and hormones, and, sex hormones versus cortisol and stress hormones, and just kind of looking at that whole picture, and making sure that everything is aligned with each other, and resetting metabolism, and healing metabolism from the inside out. When it comes to late weight loss, of course, obviously we're talking calorie conundrum, right? So we know that everyone thinks you have to eat as little amount of calories possible for weight loss, but yet we want to create a healthy deficit, not a restrictive type of deficit. So
Yeah, can you talk more about that, the difference between the deficit and the restrictive diet?
yeah, definitely. I talk a ton about this with my clients and my online programs as well. But basically, what we've all learned is calories in versus calories out. So if you eat less than you burn, then you should, in theory, lose weight. But what happens is that when we restrict the calories and we're not eating enough overall, we're gonna, damage metabolism. We're gonna basically meaning slowing our metabolic rate. We're going to have experience things like hair loss, maybe poor sleep, skin health is going to be compromised. So when we actually eat enough to support our metabolism in what I call a healthy deficit, so a lowered amount than your total daily energy expenditure, yet not too low that you're slowing down your metabolic rate. That's kind of that sweet spot to be able to change body composition, build muscle. Of course, we need to build muscle in order to change body composition, and just kind of head down a different path as far as, weight loss and body composition, not worrying so much about the scale, and using the scale in, different ways to look at inflammation and things like that.
So what are some ways that you determine that happy spot? That place between restriction and deficit, that leads to weight loss but doesn't damage the metabolism? What are some key indicators that help you determine where that sweet spot is?
Yeah, so I like to have the ladies, we do a little bit of an estimate of what their basal metabolic rate is. There is some testing out there that's available depending on what area and what area your listeners are in, but there are definitely places that you can actually get a metabolic rate test so you can know exactly what your body's doing. But an estimate, let's just say, for example, 11 to 1200 calories is can be an approximate estimate for like what an average woman would need to survive just sitting up in bed with her eyes open, not doing any movement. And then from there, I look at how much they are actually exercising and moving throughout the day. And then kind of doing an estimate between, that and that total energy expenditure, their movement, and then reducing a little bit, but having that reduction, so to speak, definitely be over their basal metabolic rate. So that's kind of the sweet spot in there. And then of course, on top of that, this is kind of adding on to your question. But on top of that is then looking at, how much protein they're getting, carbs, fats, quality, making sure that they're getting enough protein to build muscle. And that kind of just leads down the exercise path. But hopefully that answers your first question.
Yeah, so you're just kind of finding the happy spot using an estimation. And like you said, everyone's different. And I talked about the calculations and estimations of BMR and stuff before on the podcast.
Oh,
and
great. Okay.
and basically, like you said, that's one of the major errors people are making when they're trying to lose weight that I see with women, especially, is they find their BMR and then they eat less than that.
Bingo. That's what they think. Yes, exactly. That's what they think the deficit is like, okay, I'm supposed to eat less than the basal rate. No, don't do that.
Yeah, the reason why is because the basal metabolic rate is like you said, if you do nothing, that doesn't account for the activity of just daily living. Plus, if you're doing exercise. And so people think, because calories in, calories out, that if they just eat less than they're being, eat the less they eat and the more they exercise, then that equals more weight loss. But that's not how it works. And you'll find out one way or another that, that doesn't work like that. So.
Yeah, and the more times you do that, the harder it is to lose weight as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
I know I've heard you talk about that before, but I definitely wanted to kind of just chime in on that because that tends to be one of the biggest questions I get is like, oh, I've gained some weight back and I just tried to do the same thing I did before. And why isn't it work as good as it did the first time? So we kind of forget that adds stress on the hormones and lots of other things.
Yeah, exactly. So I liked how you said that, everyone's different and there's no one size fits all. And you said that you use keto to lose weight. And one of the questions I have for that is, I've heard, especially with women, that keto can be, harmful for hormones.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so how do you use that with women without harming their hormones? And then you said sometimes you'll even take people off low carb. What would determine that you take someone off a low carb or a keto type diet?
Okay, so let me see if I can get the first question first. So as far as okay, sorry, just had a brain cramp. Can you say the first question again?
The first one is, how do you do a keto diet without harming metabolism?
Okay, got it. So let's talk about that first. So basically, part of this goes back to the restriction versus deficit. A lot of people, they will eat keto foods and they will still restrict their calories below their metabolic rate. And so just because they're eating keto foods like an avocado and some chicken and maybe some bacon doesn't necessarily mean they're doing it the healthy and correct way. So that's the one thing, definitely, is making sure that they're eating enough overall. Most of the gals who come to me are in that restrictive mode, and what they should be eating for weight loss is more than they've eaten in months or years, depending on how much dieting they've actually done. So really focusing on the quality of food, quality proteins, making sure they're getting enough protein and good fats throughout the day. And then their carbs are coming from vegetables. I mean, people hear keto and they think, it's terrible, but the reality is that most Americans actually aren't eating 20 net carbs of vegetables per day, honestly. So, making sure that they're getting veggies at most meals, and really not taking the fasting thing into, let's see, how do I want to put this? Not over fasting is what I like to say. So making sure that they're focusing on fueling first. So my approach is fueling before fasting, making sure that they're eating correctly throughout the day in and day out during their eating window, making sure that they're not over fasting, working on, movement and sleep and a lot of other things with those right macros and quality of food. And then kind of going from there as far as, if they want to add fasting in. A lot of people I find are only doing extended fasting because they think it's going to help them lose weight. And while there are definitely benefits to fasting in general, the purpose that they're doing it for is not the purpose that fasting actually serves. So once they figure out that they can actually feed their body and their metabolism and still get those results that they're looking for, the fasting becomes less important. And that actually in the long run helps them to rebalance hormones and metabolism.
Okay, yeah, I've done some diet challenges with clients that I had when I had a studio, and we do different kind of diet challenges where we take certain foods out, like paleo challenges and things like that.
Mhm.
And it would happen every single time, and people would come back and say, "Yeah, I'm all right, I'm doing all right, but I'm starving,"
Right.
and I would say, "Okay, well, what'd you have for breakfast?" "Well, I had 2 eggs for breakfast." And I'm just like, okay.
And
Normally you have coffee that has twice that many calories in it, not let
exactly.
alone the bagel and the cereal and whatever else you're eating. And they wonder why they're starving. And so I'm glad you brought that up. It's an important point that when you're changing your diet like that, you have to make sure that the amount of food you're consuming is equals adequate. It's equal to
Right.
what you were eating before. And you're not just, eliminating all these foods and then all of a sudden you're eating 2 eggs, which has like 150 calories compared to like what you should be eating. And so that's very important. And so the other question I had for you was
Yes.
the second hormone question was, when do you take someone off of that diet?
Right. So definitely depends. If I have a client that I've been working with for a little bit of time and they think, we've been doing that type of approach and they're not getting results, I might have them actually change up their macros, add more carbs, more veggies, maybe a little bit more starches. I actually developed my own macro formula a few years ago, so I kind of, help them tweak that a little bit. The other thing is that, I do some different functional testing and various assessments. So with that being said, there are some clients that I just see that they just, wouldn't necessarily thrive on that type of, I hate to use the word diet, but it technically is a diet, right? Or nutritional approach. And we'll just kind of, or start out, with more carbs, less fat. I'm really big on protein across the board. That the protein thing is more about their activity level, their training. I work with some athletes and a lot of women who are very active. So that's kind of across the board. Like, we need to make sure they get their protein, just because so many women are struggling with hair loss and, just a host of other problems. But basically, like I was saying, whether they have done an assessment with me that has kind of indicated that that might not be the best approach for them, or they have shown me through like dieting or food logs or other means that they have definitely given the low carb approach a significant try. They've done it correctly and it's not working. That's when we'll kind of tweak things the other direction.
Is there anything specific, like what on the lab test or in the questionnaire or whatever you're doing? Is there anything specific so that like the listeners can say, "I'm doing this diet and this is happening. Maybe I should reevaluate." Besides not getting results, obviously. I mean, is there anything
Yeah,
specific?
so aside, yeah, so I would say like if significant problems are continuing, like digestive issues, um, uh, sleep problems. I hear a lot of people that are trying to approach the keto approach for like weight loss, their sleep quality gets a lot worse. The things that we are supposed to be doing naturally on a daily basis shouldn't be compromised. Energy levels should not drop. That's another one actually. They don't do it correctly. They're not adding electrolytes, or maybe they do and it's just like I said, not right for them, and they get like, I'm supposed to be feeling fantastic. Everyone in, all these Facebook groups are saying how great they feel, but their energy is in the toilet and they can't survive their day, right? Or they can't sleep, they're not sleeping at night anymore. Those are some significant things where, we would want to say like, okay, let's look at a different type of approach.
Yeah, that's where it comes down to the bio individuality of the person, and kind of listening to the body. I say that lots on the podcast. It's like no matter what fad diet is out there, or who's getting success doing what, it's ultimately up to you and what works for your body, and that may be keto, it may be something
Hmm.
else, but you don't know until you try it, and then successfully, try it with, honestly,
Right, and
actually do
the
it.
right way, yeah.
Yeah, and actually
Like
do it.
I always tell people like it's not the bacon and butter diet, right? Like so protein doesn't come from bacon and salami, right?
Yeah.
Because that's and pork rinds. That's kind of like the MO for keto. And yes, people can use those foods for sure, but I like to call those accent foods. And I like to still make sure, quality protein means grass-fed meat and egg, pasture-raised eggs, and rotating protein sources and all of that kind of thing, like that type of approach.
Yeah. So you said you want to be as fit as you ever been in your 40s. So, um, and we talked a little bit about diet. What do you recommend for exercise, and what people might be doing wrong with that?
Yeah. So what I was doing wrong, let's start with that. We can talk about what I was doing wrong first in my 20s, which was an hour and a half to 2 hours of cardio a day and no strength training, no weight training. And that was really, really taxing on my hormones. And so my kind of approach with female clients as well is making sure that they are doing the resistance training, that their, resistance training is a bigger percentage of their exercise or their workouts than the cardiovascular training for weight loss. Now, don't get me wrong, we all know cardiovascular exercise has its benefits. But, in order to change body composition, to drop fat, to truly have fat loss, and to increase muscle mass to help, support our joints and stand up straight as we age, all of that kind of stuff. We do need to have more muscle mass. So we need to eat enough protein. We need to lift weights. We need to do resistance training. All of this, of course, I just want to say, like within physical capability. So making sure that you are physically capable of lifting the amount of weights that you're lifting and choosing weights wisely and checking your form and doing all of the work to make sure that's all correct. But definitely emphasizing strength training over cardiovascular training.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend that when people hear that, that they find somebody to help them if they've never done it before, especially because you can't really see yourself or understand if you're doing something correctly or wrong if you're not viewing yourself from the outside. It's kind of hard to determine if you're doing it correctly. So I recommend that people definitely find somebody that knows what they're doing when it comes to the movement part, and make sure that you're doing the basic movements correctly, because a lot of times people even people that think they know what they're doing, if you were watching from the outside in, you could obviously see they're not doing it correctly. You could just see that they're not doing it correctly. But
yeah, and I think too, like, number one, I'll say when I was in my 20s, I actually did, when I finally started to change my workouts and do more resistance, I did invest in a personal trainer at that time. And it was the best thing that I ever did, because I learned the correct form. I learned how to engage the muscles, make sure I'm using those muscles. So often we kind of watch people work out and they're just like, oh, flinging the bicep, the weight up and thinking that they're doing a bicep curl, and then like, why isn't my body changing or whatever? So I definitely agree with making sure that form is right and you get the best instruction, and so that you can take that into your own workouts.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I'm not a big fan of online training either. I know with all the lockdowns and people can't go to the gym and stuff,
Tough time, yeah.
people are trying to work out from home. But when it comes to working out, like if you've never done it before and you've never had someone watch you, then there's a good chance that you're going to screw yourself up worse than just not doing anything. because it's just it's like it's an inherently dangerous thing, especially if you're using actual weights. If you're using body weight, it's kind of hard to hurt yourself unless you're really overweight. But if you're actually moving, putting resistance against something, then you want to make sure that you're using the correct form.
Yeah, and if I could just add, I will say, I do think, just because we're on the topic of resistance training, and maybe everyone during this crazy time right now, or whenever this airs, doesn't necessarily have access to a gym or access to weights, you can for sure be effective with quote unquote resistance training with body weight workouts. So, and I just encourage that, because if again, there's so many benefits to resistance training. Um, you know, check out a body weight workout if you don't have, weights or access to a gym or something like that. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there.
Yeah, I would actually recommend that people master the body weight stuff before they start loading.
100%. Yep.
And so there's people out there trying to do bench press that can't even do a push up. There's people, they're doing all kinds of exercises and they can't do the body weight equivalent version of that. And obviously you got to start somewhere and you got to build yourself up over time. But if you're doing body weight squats and it looks like you just got shot by somebody or something,
Exactly.
and then you go to the gym and you load up the leg press or you load up the Smith machine and put a whole bunch of weight on it, and you're trying to do squats under load, then that's when people get injured. So
exactly.
just be smart out there when you're working out, and you can see benefits from body weight, especially if you're just starting out. Just doing anything is going to improve you more than just your sedentary self. But there's always ways to progress and get better with that. So if I was a woman and I was in my 40s and I've been on the yo-yo diet, I've got this idea of what's repeated everywhere, that calories in, calories out. If I want to lose weight, I need to eat less and exercise more. And I showed up to your doorstep or to your coaching program or online website or whatever. And I said, hey, I've been, this is where I'm at. I'm overweight. I'm in my 40s and I'm a woman and I want to lose weight. Where would you start and where would you kind of lead that person?
Yeah. So actually the first thing that I would have you do is take a week or two and log exactly what you're currently doing. I wouldn't want you to make any changes just because you're writing it down. I don't care if you drink wine, if you have chocolate chip cookies, if you eat ice cream every night, if you don't eat breakfast, if you drink coffee for breakfast, because what I want to see is exactly what you're doing right now. And I believe the reason I do that is because I want to not only see what you're doing right now, but I'm going to help you go to whatever that next level is for you, not for what I think it should be. And that's part of, getting compliance with clients, especially women who might be struggling with cravings and hormone problems and feeling like, you know, they're having an out of body experience 2 weeks out of the month because their hormones are shifting and, you know, things are changing. And so that's going to help me to just figure out what changes that person is going to be able to make and be compliant and comply with at that next level, that are not going to be overwhelming, that are going to feel doable, so to speak, and then go from there. Once we get through the next couple of weeks, then it's going to be, okay, what's the next level from that? It might be, you know, the first kind of next level step might be just giving this person some better, honestly, like some better treat recipes, or making sure they get a little bit more protein on on a daily basis. Most of the women coming to me are eating like 40 to 60 grams of protein a day, which that should be like a meal or two for some ladies. So it's really just looking at each person individually, what they're currently doing, and helping them go to what's next for them. Not what I think is next for them long term in 6 months. And I see a lot of people not bridging, you know, other so-called experts. They don't bridge that gap. They get a client, they see what, okay, they want to lose weight, and they give them the fanciest, you know, whether it's nutrition, meal plan, that kind of thing. And then there's the person isn't compliant because they can't, it's not doable. So we have to help them be compliant. They have to have gradual steps. I I do meal plans to a certain extent, but I don't do them most of the time because that tells them nothing about what their body needs. If I tell a client and teach a client how to balance their macros on a daily basis, they can go to Pinterest and they can find any of the 8 trillion meal plans that are out there and make that work for them. The reason that they can't do that now is because they don't know what their body needs. So as soon as they know what their body needs, they don't need to rely on me for a meal plan because they're learning to eat intuitively long term. They know how much protein, fat, and carbs to get on a daily basis, and they can carry that into, like I said, a meal plan, a restaurant, a vacation, you know, whatever their situation is. They have that foundation. Going back to what we were talking about, like that foundation of nutrition. They have that foundation for their body and metabolism, and they don't have any more guesswork.
Yeah, so that's a lot of nuggets there I got to pull out because this is exactly what people need. If you're trying to lose weight and you've tried to lose weight before, or you know, wherever you're starting, this is exactly the process you need to take. And the first thing you brought up was the fact of tracking and recording what you're eating. And I think I that's the number one step that you have to do, because you don't know, you know, how to get to where you want to go if you don't know where you're starting, right? And
And it's
so
a scary step for a lot of people.
yeah, it's scary. And the reason why is I think a lot of people feel ashamed, and they feel like they're going to be like, you know, put down because they're eating a certain way. But the thing about it is like uh, a major issue and thing people do wrong when they're trying to lose weight is they don't track, so they don't know how much they're eating, and then they go on a diet. And like you said, some people are eating, you know, as much protein in one day as they should be eating in one meal, and so they're taking their calories from already less than what they should be eating to lower than that, and that's never a plan for success. And
Right.
so you have to feed your body enough fuel to do what you're trying to accomplish, and just taking calories away is not always the answer. And so tracking is very important for that. Also, tracking can give you so many other, just besides the macronutrients and the amount of food, it can tell you what someone is eating as far as quality and some of the possible other things that could be going on with their health. And then
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was also gonna say, I also, you know, not only for, it's eye-opening for the client because they can see what they're actually doing, but I'm looking beyond just the numbers of the macros, so to speak. I'm looking for their responses 1 to 2 to 3 hours after their meals. I'm looking for different patterns and things that are happening throughout their day. So that's just the numbers and the macros are kind of like looking at it at face value. But beyond that, I'm looking to see again how their body is responding to food, because that's telling us more about their metabolism sometimes than the actual food itself.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's the calorie conundrum, because
Right.
people are adding up all these numbers, they're doing all these math problems trying to lose weight. In reality, they're in a terrible marriage.
Exactly.
They hate their job, they're not getting any sleep, they don't drink water ever. It goes on and on and on, but it's not a math problem. It's a calorie conundrum problem, and
Exactly.
that relates to everything else besides just the numbers.
Yeah.
But then from there, that kind of leads into the next thing, is kind of starting where you are. You have to start, you know, uh, if you where you can't get to where you're going if you don't know where you're starting from, like I said before. And um, this helps illuminate, where you're at. And this is a lesson that I've learned recently, because I've gone through some of the similar training that you have gone through. And one of the reasons why I was attracted to a lot of the trainings that you've gone through is
Hmm.
because it fit my personality type.
Hmm.
And that personality type is very logical, um, left brained. If you want to lose weight, do X, success. And that is not the way people's minds work. That's how my mind works. But that's how a
Right.
lot of the trainings that I have gone through in the past, that's how they trained. If you want success, do this, and then follow these, steps, and you will get success, which makes sense in my mind. But it doesn't work like that for people, because um, everyone has a place they feel comfortable going. And if you don't find out where they're at, you can't bridge that gap, like you said, successfully, because they're going to feel overwhelmed. They're going to feel like they're failing. And I've been going through a health coaching course, and that's something that I've definitely learned. It's like, you have to start where the people are, and you have to, it has to be an 8 or 9 out of 10 every little step that they make along the way. Because if it's not, they're not going to be able to make it, even if it's simple for us as
Right.
a coach or a fitness professional. They've got to be able to do that themselves. But
Yeah, and I think too, like in like logically, somebody knows, okay, if I can't run 23 miles today, then I shouldn't try to go run a marathon tomorrow. If I can run 1 mile, then I should run 2 miles next week and 3 miles the next week. And eventually I'm going to get to 26. But people don't think of it that way. But that's exactly the approach because what happens if they go too fast, they're going to get injured. They're going to end up back where they started from. But people don't realize, we don't kind of think about that as far as like, the health, the hormones, the digestion, solving, rebalancing those types of things, versus running a marathon.
yeah, either that or they get burned out, which a lot of people
Hmm.
do. It's like they don't get injured, but they get burned out of getting up, going to the gym, working out, crazy hard, and then they just go back to square one, sit on the couch, and instead of taking it, maybe you don't have to work out every day. Maybe you can work
Right.
out every third day or something, just to get started, and then maybe build the momentum. And then the third thing you said that I picked out, major nugget that I picked out from what you said was, one, you said tracking, starting where you are. And then the last thing was finding out what you need in relation to food. But I would like to, say that that's finding out what you need in all areas of life. I think that's important if you want to see success with weight loss or health or anything like that, then you got to find out what works for your body. And like I said
Hmm.
before, nobody can tell you what that is. You have to kind of figure that out for yourself. So those are some, hopefully you're paying attention, because those are some good nuggets that Dani left us with today.
Yeah.
Um, all right, Dani, this has been a great interview. If the listeners want to reach out to you some way, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, they're welcome to check out my website, contact me through nutritionthenaturalway.com. My email is Dani@nutritionthenaturalway.com. And they can also find me on social media channels. Facebook and Instagram is where I spend most of my time. I have a few pages on Facebook, Dani Conway, or what is my other one? Keto Nutrition Macros for Weight Loss. And then I also have my Instagram is Dani_equestrian life, because I do ride horses actually as well.
That's great. I hope some people got some value from this interview, and I'm sure they did if they were listening. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks so much, Coach Strick, for having me.
I hope you enjoyed that interview with Dani. This interview is a prime example of someone that was playing the traditional calories in, calories out game and losing. It wasn't until Dani spent a lot of time, energy, and money on finding the answers to her health and weight loss problems was she able to finally see long-term success. Dani's recommendations seem simple, but they are the exact steps that many people skip and instead reach for the next fad diet or magic pill. There might not always be an easy answer to every complex weight loss issue, but continuing to try the same diet or using the same mentality that has failed time and time again is not a logical solution. Find someone like Dani that has lived through the same struggles you may be feeling and has experience and expertise to look at your health and weight loss issues in a new light. And with that said, this is Coach Strick saying thanks for listening, and remember, when calories in, calories out doesn't work, that, my friend, is a calorie conundrum.
This podcast, including Coach Strick and guests, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects for the use of any information contained herein. Coach Strick and/or guests may recommend products or services in which they have a direct or indirect financial interest. To find out more, please visit www.calorieconundrum.com.